Assize of Bread. Between the 12th and 15th centuries, across England and much of Western Europe, bread production was commonly regulated by law. Bread formed the primary staple food for many urban populations, and irregularities in its supply were closely monitored by local authorities. Laws set expected standards for loaf weight and price. In England, this system was enforced through the Assize of Bread and Ale, which adjusted loaf size in relation to grain prices. Violations could result in fines, confiscation of goods, or public penalties such as time in the pillory. Because these penalties for short weighing were so severe, bakers began adding a 13th loaf to every order of 12 to make sure they never fell below the legal requirement. This cautious practice gave rise to the term baker's dozen. These measures were intended to reduce shortages and discourage practices that could destabilise the food supply. Hygiene punishment. From the 12th through to the 15th century, in many urban centres across Western Europe, waste management was regulated by local law. Activities such as slaughtering, tanning, and market trading produced refuse that accumulated rapidly in confined spaces. Town records document fines issued for dumping waste into streets or waterways. Such measures were intended to reduce health risks and manage conditions that could otherwise become hazardous in densely populated towns. Restricted gambling. During the 13th to the 15th centuries, gambling was frequently restricted by law in England and other parts of Western Europe. Dice and card games were often associated by authorities with disorder, debt, and neglect of work for military duties. Military ordinances record bans on gambling outside specific festival periods. Enforcement commonly involved fines or seizure of gaming equipment. These restrictions aim to limit activities believed to interfere with discipline and productivity. Animal trials. From the 13th to the 16th century, particularly in parts of France, Switzerland, and the Holy Roman Empire, there are documented cases of animals being formally prosecuted in court. In many towns and villages, livestock move freely through the streets and living spaces, and incidents involving injury or death, especially involving pigs, were sometimes treated as legal matters rather than accidents. In recorded cases, the animal was seized, confined, and presented before a court. Proceedings appear to have followed standard legal forms, including testimony and judgment. Court records from France and Switzerland describe such trials, and illustrated manuscripts depict animals shown before judges in structured settings. Sentences commonly involved execution or removal from the community. Curfew. From the 12th century onward, in many towns across Western Europe, nightly curfews were introduced to limit risk after dark. Medieval settlements were often densely built and constructed largely from timber, which increased vulnerability to fire and made nighttime enforcement difficult. At a fixed hour, commonly marked by the ringing of a bell, residents were expected to extinguish fires and clear the streets. Movement after this time was usually limited to guards and individuals with permission. People found outside without cause could be detained or fined, depending on local regulations. Curfew reduced nighttime activity and simplified enforcement in many towns. Sumptuary Law. From the 13th through the 16th century, in regions including England, France, Italy, and the Holy Roman Empire, sumptuary laws were used to regulate clothing and personal display. These laws restricted the use of certain fabrics, colours, furs, and decorative elements according to social rank or profession. Legal codes from various regions describe penalties, most often fines, for violations. Manuscript art from the period frequently shows social classes distinguished by clothing, reflecting the legal and cultural importance of visual status. By limiting certain forms of dress, authorities sought to maintain clear distinctions between social groups and reduce ambiguity in daily interactions. However, enforcement was often inconsistent. The repeated reissuing of these laws over centuries suggests they were frequently ignored. Sunday restrictions. From the 11th through the 15th century, across much of Christian Europe, labour on Sundays and major religious feast days were commonly restricted by law. These rules applied most consistently to markets, workshops, and public trades. Enforcement varied by region and period, involving both secular authorities and church courts. For most townspeople, this meant that work and markets paused on specific days, structuring life around Sundays and feast days. Blasphemy as a crime. Between the 12th and 16th centuries, in Western and Central Europe, blasphemy was treated in many jurisdictions as a legal offence. Speaking against God or church doctrine could be prosecuted in courts, sometimes with the involvement of secular authorities. Legal records describe penalties ranging from fines and imprisonment to public acts of penance. By placing limits on speech, medieval law addressed behaviour believed to pose a risk to religious and civic stability. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to look out for the next one.